Welcome to the Big House Bleachers podcast, proud member of the Block M Podcast Network, brought to you by Fans First Sports. I'm Michael Smeltzer. I'm here with Matt Hartwell. Matt was just telling me he had some Taco Bell to celebrate America for Memorial Day today. How was that Taco Bell, my friend?
It was absolutely disgusting, Mike. I'm not going to let you lose. It was enjoyable, for the time I spent eating it. Let's hope I don't regret it later on. But as you and I discussed prior to the pod, no better way to celebrate America than some disgusting fake Mexican cuisine. I'm ready to podcast, my friend. How you doing today?
Man, I'm good. And you're right. There's nothing more American than some crummy Mexican food, but I'm doing good, man. My wife and I just got back from the lake. I got a little jet ski. I have the outline of a life jacket sunburned onto my back right now. So it's like pasty white in the middle, and then all the areas that the life jacket didn't cover, bright red. So I'm sure I'll be peeling this week, but I'm excited.
Nothing more American than that.
Yeah. Then a pasty
shitty
white guy
farmer's tan of some life vest you were wearing while you're jet skiing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Big House Bleachers pod, boys, celebrating America the right way. I'm excited for this podcast, to be honest, because we're going to craft. You and I are going to work together, and we're going to craft the top 15 moments of Michigan football's national championship season. I got chills just thinking about it. We're within 100 days of college football kicking off, and so we're going to do a whole lot of predicting and pontificating and all this stuff. We're going to look forward a lot in the coming weeks. We wanted to take one more moment to look backwards at this amazing season that we had and just soak it up one more time. So we're going to do that. But before we do that, there's still news going on. And so, Matt, you wanted to run through some sound bites that hit the interweb this week. So I'm going to hand over the mic to you, and you can share some of the stories that you picked up.
Yeah, Mike, and to your point, at this point in the off season, it kind of goes into a lull where you and I and other members of the media will be doing a lot of predicting, power ranking, a lot of looking ahead to the 2025 or 2024 season, excuse me. But still, can't move on without taking a second look back at these plays that you and I are going to be discussing. But first and foremost, there's definitely some interesting things to talk about before we get into that. Sherrone Moore, appearing on the Champion Circle podcast, The Lab, hosted by Jake Butt, offered a little bit of insight into the team's recruiting. And, I wrote up an article about it and was getting a lot of great feedback in the comments regarding Moore's comments, and wanted to just kind of bounce it off you to see what you thought about it. In regards to Michigan's overall recruiting strategy, Moore had to say, you look at the types of guys we just won the national title with. We didn't have a whole bunch of 5 stars. We had some. We want to have elite talent, don't get me wrong, but I think there's enough of it out there that you can find that also fits the culture. We're definitely going to try and bring in the right type of guys here, the right type of families to become Michigan men and Michigan women, and continue to keep this program at the highest level. Mike, what are your thoughts on Moore's comments and overall how he's approaching this Michigan football 2024 recruiting cycle?
I fully expect and fully believe that Sherrone Moore can keep the culture of Michigan football intact, that the blue-collar, grinded out 3- and 4-star guys can go out there and whoop up on some 5-star guys, especially because the recruiting in the trenches has not fallen off at all. And so, the trenches is a key for a team like Michigan. I really think we have everything for the recipe that we had last year, we have this year, except for one thing. It's not the great Blake Corum. It's not the great Mikey Sainristil. it's J.J. McCarthy, right? Like that's the it factor. And don't get me wrong. I mean, Blake Corum was probably the best player that we've seen at Michigan in a long time. I'm not saying that J.J. McCarthy was better than Blake Corum. I'm just saying that I feel confident in Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings, Benjamin Hall, whoever else might step in there. The quarterback position is the one thing that makes me think like, okay, like, yes, dominating in the trenches is good. Yes, all these transfers we got in the secondary on defense are amazing. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, like, we are going to make some plays. I have no doubt about it. But, man, I still need to see a quarterback that can step out onto that field and comfortably dominate a game and comfortably, manage when they need to manage, not turn the ball over. So, Alex Orji, I'm behind you 100%. I am praying for you, my brother, because I know Orji's going to be the starter. I don't care what anybody says. Like, they're putting Orji out there to play some football. It's going to happen. So, please take care of the football. Please, read the defense and get some plays downfield, and if that can happen, Orji's legs are better than J.J. McCarthy's, and so there is a chance that what we see from Alex Orji might even be more exciting than what we saw from J.J. McCarthy. But in response to the quote that you just shared, Matt, I believe Sherrone Moore's got that culture intact, and we're going to go out there and beat up on some guys.
Agreed, but you can't sleep on my guy Carter Smith, right? I think that this is a recruit that they have in pocket here, and a young quarterback, that might be being a little bit overlooked in some of the recruiting rankings. Michigan has a knack for getting some of these gritty type competitors. I think Carter Smith is a great guy that they have in pocket, stepping in to kind of keep this Michigan legacy of great quarterbacks going, but we'll see. I kind of am inclined to agree with you that I think, and there's a mixture, right? You definitely need to have like a majority of your key targets in there as like good fits for the University of Michigan. Ultimately, they all need to be great fits for the University of Michigan, but just in terms of looking at star ratings and stuff, you got to have like a couple Will Johnsons or J.J. McCarthy's in there type of caliber guys to kind of just keep this thing rolling with the formula that you've already established. But I'll move on here. Will Johnson spoke on the Wink Martindale defense. You and I have discussed it a few times. So many questions flying around about what this defense is going to look like in 2024. Will Johnson appeared on the Steady Droppin' Dimes podcast with Sam Webb and Devin Gardner, and answered a little bit further into detail, more so than other players have gone, in regards to Martindale's defense. And here's what he had to say. I built up a very good chemistry with Coach Minter and a lot of trust. The thing about that defense, we all were on the same page. We all knew what was going on, and we were all really dialed into what he wanted and what the game plan was. And I feel like everything was won. With Coach Martindale, it's getting back to that. He's got his own style. It's the same defense, but obviously he has his own way of running, way of calling it. So it's getting on the same page of the things we excel at as the players on our team, knowing our personnel, knowing the types of things he likes. It's really just going to have to be a lot of communication. He's a little more aggressive. Mike, what are your thoughts on Mr. Johnson's comments regarding the Wink Martindale defense?
Cautiously optimistic. Let's face it. Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter, they fit the same profile. They have this young, next wave, next generation of the game kind of look about them. And when they were out there calling the defense, you were like, oh, they're just one step ahead of everybody. As Michigan fans, we've been traumatized by a really good defensive coordinator by the name of Don Brown, right? Like, he was good. As a matter of fact, he had some defenses that were ranked, number 1 or 2 or 3 for like a majority of the season. But when he came up against the big dogs. He was a little too aggressive. He had that balls to the wall, like grumpy old man kind of look about him. And unfortunately, or I don't even mean unfortunately, but coincidentally, Wink Martindale also has that grumpy old man like look about him. And so I think as Michigan fans, we're all like, okay, like it's the same system. As a matter of fact, he's the godfather of the system. So maybe this is the best defense we're going to see yet. But I'm just a little cautious. I'm a little cautious, but just because I'll believe it when I see it. The players are there. The talent is there. Now, all of a sudden, the depth is there. Wink Martindale, just go out there and prove it. We want to see. We will know come week 2 what this defense is made of when Texas travels to the Big House.
Absolutely. And that's really a big point of nervousness for me, Mike, is that for all intents and purposes, this seems like a defensive scheme that's relatively intact from where it was a season or two ago. That being said, it sounds a lot like, this defense is going to be called in a very different way than what the players have been used to, and that it will be a little bit more aggressive than in years past. So I think that there are nuances. I think that there's definitely things and characteristics about this defense that have been different than in other years past. I think it's just more going to be an issue of communication, getting on the same page, recognizing how Wink Martindale wants to call the defense and how he reacts to certain situations and things like that. But I think that, these comments from Johnson are a good indication that things are heading in the right direction as we proceed through the offseason here. So last quote is about a guy that you and I both discussed heavily last week after Michigan's enormous weekend transfer portal haul, and that is Amir Hall, transfer from Albany. He also appeared on the Steady Droppin' Dimes podcast with Will Johnson, hosted by Sam Webb and Devin Gardner. And this was in regards to him choosing Michigan over other schools with paths to probably easier playing time like Virginia, Syracuse, Indiana. Instead, he chose Michigan. Here's what he had to say about that decision that I found very insightful. And one thing about Michigan that I learned very quickly on my visit was the blue-collar mentality and everything that goes into being a Michigan Wolverine. That's something that I try to pride myself on, and I feel like I can fit in that culture very well. Competition breeds success, and I feel like for me, this is something that will propel me to the next level, which is my ultimate goal. Mike, how familiar do those types of words sound versus other recruits that have come in here and just dominated at the Michigan level? What are your thoughts on what Amir Hall had to say?
It sounds so good. That is exactly what you want a recruit to say, especially coming to Michigan. In the age of NIL and all the transfer portal, jargon that goes on, having a guy talk like that is refreshing, and it speaks to the culture that Sherrone Moore was referencing in that first quote that you gave. I'm hoping that this is like a Josh Wallace 2.0, because Josh Wallace was exactly what that secondary needed. Coming from a smaller school, hardworking, blue-collar guy, really well-rounded. And Amir Hall, we talked about him last week. He's the highest-graded cornerback on that defense now, I think. Highest-graded defensive back on that defense. And so, and that, of course, that's according to PFF. We can take that with a grain of salt, but to hear him talk like that, it reminds me of Ladarius Henderson last year, who, he wasn't getting the snaps that we all thought he was going to get early in the season. And Ladarius Henderson, it was like almost verbatim what you just shared from Amir Hall. It was like about competition making him better. He didn't come here to take the easy way out. He wants to earn his spot. That's the kind of language that championship teams have. It's selfless, it's mature, and it's blue collar. So I love it, man.
Yeah, and I'd hate to, overshadow guys like Jair Hill who have been here, who are still competing, obviously, for that spot. Ricky Johnson, who's no slouch at all, any of those guys. But, I feel like this kid is just cut from the Michigan cloth. Hearing, why he decided to come to Michigan, over the path greater traveled, an easier path to starting playing time at other Power Five schools. It reminds me exactly like what have you said, and other guys like Drake Nugent, AJ Barner, guys that came in to this Michigan system knowing that it's not going to be as easy to carve out a starting role, than other options, but still that this system and the competition that they'll face within this system is going to be their best chance to succeeding at the next level. And, that's a big part of what Michigan sells to these guys. And I'm loving that he's eating it up. I think that he's going to be a great candidate for this team. There's a lot of other good stuff that he said in that interview. If you want to check it out, I wrote an article on it on Maize n Brew. Go to my page. It's not too far down, but I think this guy just screams Michigan Wolverine. So whether or not he wins the starting job, big fan already of Amir Hall.
Well, he's going to play. All these guys are going to play. I mean, we learned that a year ago, right? You got injuries, you got rotational stuff, you got games where, we might be 2 or 3 scores up. So, like, all these guys are going to play. So we're going to definitely see him. All right, let's get to the main event. I don't know why I'm so excited about this one. I think it's that we get to relive some of these moments that were really the best moments of our lifetime. Going back to Charles Woodson and Brian Greasy and those guys winning in '97. It's like we've been waiting for this championship team for so long, and the way that it happened, 15-0, undisputed. It's just a legendary season that we saw Michigan just have. And so you and I, let's do it right now. Let's break down the top 15 greatest moments of Michigan's national championship run. I think the best way for us to do this is we just we work together. So it's not like we're each going to name 15. We work together. We present what we think. We're going to start at the top, number 1, and go down. And we present like which one we think should be there. And so let's start with number 1. I'll tell you what I have on my list as the greatest moment of the season. I'm curious. I think this has got to be up there for you. But my top 3, I feel pretty strongly are 1, 2, and 3. But Michigan defense stuffing Jalen Milroe at the goal line in overtime to win the Rose Bowl. That's my number 1.
That's absolutely my number 1 as well, Mike. And for the record, I think that this is the perfect way to do this exercise so we can kind of go back and forth and, not lose track of any of these amazing moments that occurred this season. But
yep.
I'm right there in lockstep with you. I think that moment, because, really, like, when you look at both playoff games, I feel like myself and a lot of Michigan fans hold that Bama victory in their hearts as, perhaps not a more meaningful victory than against Washington. You know what I mean? But just hold it in a little bit nearer and dearer perspective than the win against Washington. So I view that one as, the most pivotal moment of the season. All of the Wolverines and the team rushing the field, the picturesque scene that went on after the fact. I think that it's absolutely the number 1 moment.
Well, you have these moments in sports where something feels impossible and then it happens. That's why the snow game in 2021 with Hutch and Ojabo and Haskins, getting over the hump against Ohio State. Like, it started to feel impossible. It's just like, oh, we're going to go out, we're going to play a good game, and we're going to lose again, And so that's one of the reasons why that game was so special. But what's different about this Rose Bowl in the 2023 season is in 2021, that snow game, we dominated, we pulled away, it started getting better and better and better. This moment in the Rose Bowl, it was like all of that passion and excitement in one play, in one moment, and Michigan went down 20-13 late in the game, and it's here we go again, right? We had been bounced out of the playoffs. Georgia beat the shit out of us, and then TCU surprised us, and then here we are again in the Rose Bowl. We got a shit ton of sacks, playing well, everything except the special teams, playing good. And then we're in overtime against Bama, Nick Saban Bama, and it looks like they're going to go score and tie the game. And just in that moment, it was unreal. I was overcome with emotion as a diehard Michigan fan. I'm not ashamed to say it. I cried. I cried at that moment. Like, I didn't even cry when we won the Natty, man, because of the way that it transpired. But when we won that Rose Bowl, it felt like we got over the hump. This season is different. This team is different. Without a doubt, the number one moment of the season.
Absolutely. It was just total validation, as from anyone that's ever had a thought or theory about, the grit of this program, it just meant so much to observe that victory. And like I already mentioned, the rushing of the field afterwards by all the players, and JJ and Mike Sane were still having a moment there as the confetti's falling. It will definitely just be burned into my brain when I think of this Michigan championship run. So without a doubt, I agree with you as that being the number one moment.
Let me just add, I think it's the fastest Kenneth Grant has ever run when he tore his helmet off and was like running down the field. That's what I envision, is that moment of Kenneth Grant just like celebrating the win. The whole team was celebrating, but something about him, I think it's because he's so large. He just
charging with his helmet and leading the charge. I wish I could just I might even do it, get a portrait of that moment, like the players all rushing to the center of the field and the confetti falling. Like, if there's a picture of that, I want to blow that fucker up, because
it's the one.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's move to number 2. I'll let you go first here. I'm curious if we're still in lockstep here. So what's your number 2?
Number 2, Mike, we've already gone on and on about the significance of that Bama game. I'm not even going to go to the Natty here at number 2. I'm going to go with, a play that is, in my mind, equally iconic, and that is the Blake Corum 17-yard touchdown run, spinning into the end zone. The highlight that gets played again and again on social media, Blake Corum getting his helmet grabbed, breaking tackles, Carson Barnhart, leading the way, pumping his fists after he scores. I think that is perhaps one of the most iconic plays, next to that final, stopping drive by Michigan, that is almost equally as iconic as that moment.
Okay, so we're actually now we've got some discussion, because we're in slightly different places. I had that. It's in my top 6. It's in my top 6. It's up there, but I had it a little bit lower. I'll tell you what, my number 2 was the Rod Moore walk-off interception against Ohio State. I mean, to me, that's to the significance of it, right? Like, again, that's a game where it kind of felt like Ohio State was about to go win the damn thing. You and I were both there. We were at that game, and I know, like, when Marvin Harrison Jr. caught that one pass and got him down the field, Michigan was up by less than a touchdown, and it felt like we were going to lose to Ohio State, and that would have been basically the end of the national championship season. So when Rod Moore picked off that ball, to me, that was the next biggest moment of the season.
All right, I feel like our conversation's about to shift here to now just a wide open discussion for numbers 1 through 5. All right, because I'm
Yeah.
gonna bust it open here. That one's in my top 5, but
Okay.
that one's number 5 for me. But there's another moment from that game that I view almost, equally more iconic and important.
Okay, I'm with
That
you. I'm
is
with you.
Blake Corum run for 22 yards after the Zach Zinter injury. Oh, I cried real tears in that moment, bro. Like
Yeah.
you said, you and I were both there. I was crying like a baby next to my fiance. Like Zach Zinter just went down. My wife's like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, I'm just over here losing it. Blake Corum just breaks one, scores immediately after such an emotional moment. And that there was just no way Michigan was losing that game after that happened. The Rod Moore moment, like I said, it's in my top 5. But that injury to Zach Zinter followed up by a Blake Corum tutty. I mean, it's a little bit higher for me on that perspective. I've got that one at number 4. So
Okay. So let's do this. So I've got that at number 4 as well. And so we've both got that moment in the top 4. Is it fair to just say since neither one of us have it below 4, that'll be our number 2? We'll just throw it at number 2.
agreed.
All right, let's do it. I think because of the emotion behind it. So the "Let's Go Zach" chant, Blake Corum. Homeboy just like shattered his leg. I mean, and then
And
we're all thinking.
I
Go ahead.
almost forgot about it, after you proposed this exercise and I was going through all the moments. That was a really meaningful moment and for myself and you to be a part of that, at the stadium witnessing it in person,
Mm-hmm.
and for Blake Corum to score despite like all of the wind being let out of that stadium. Like it's the quietest, Mike, that I've ever heard a stadium in my
Yeah.
life. And you and I have been to some games, but you could hear a pin drop in that place. And then for Blake Corum to come out, for the offensive line to come out and just reignite things after something that could break a lot of people's seasons.
Dude, this whole season was a movie, man. It was just such a movie. All right, so okay, now stay with me here. I got one other one I want to throw into the conversation. So we got the Rose Bowl stuff, number 1. Let's Go Zach chant, Corum touchdown, number 2. Now, we already brought up the Rod Moore walk-off interception. That was my number 2. And then your number 2 was the Blake Corum touchdown run in the Rose Bowl. Fair. One other moment that I think should be at least thrown in the mix here, as we're looking at number 3, is the Mike Sainristil fourth quarter interception in the Natty. I mean, that was it, right? Like that was it. Down 2 scores. Penix needs to make a move. If anybody can score points fast, it's Michael Penix and this Washington, team. And then Mike Sainristil seals the deal, takes it all the way back to like the 5-yard line. I mean, that was just like the whole season coming to fruition, national champs, So I want that at least in the mix here.
Oh yeah, I had that one at number 3. I initially have that one here as number 3, and
So
then
did I.
have the Let's Go Zach, and then the Rod Moore walk-off interception, to kind of round off that top 5. But yeah, I totally agree.
So do you want to do Rod Moore or Sainristil in that third spot?
Sainristil.
Okay, Sainristil at 3, and then because we have the Let's Go Zach chant Blake Corum touchdown already up there at number 2, I feel like we should put Rod Moore above the Corum touchdown in the Rose Bowl. But I'm open if you want to push back on that.
No, I agree. We've got a strong
Okay.
Rose Bowl showing there for our number 1 spot. The Blake Corum moment's still iconic, but I think all of those plays that we've got there are pretty well cemented.
So Rod Moore at 4, and then we'll do the Blake Corum overtime touchdown run in the Rose Bowl at 5. That's a strong top five. Okay, now we're getting into like the territory where anything goes. Like I feel like those were all really good. So what do you want to nominate? We're at number 6 now. We're going 15 deep. What do you want to nominate as the number 6 play? Or actually, let me correct myself. Not just play, moment. Because I've got some that aren't even plays. They're just moments of the season. So the number 6 moment. What do you want to nominate?
Let's see. I'm going to go the moment following Michigan's win over Penn State. I think I'm going to go with that. I feel like lost on a lot of this stuff, over the conclusion of Michigan winning, all of that stuff was, the mental torture that this team went through following the fallout of the Connor Stallions sign stealing shenanigans. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of, terrible things said about this team heading into a raucous environment in Happy Valley against Penn State, a top 10 team on the road in one of college football's toughest environments. I hinted at this prior to our start of this episode as this being one of those games where I can't really point out one thing where it was like an iconic moment. But, Michigan getting the win at the end of that game, all of the emotion that was just pent up, the handicap that was put on the Wolverines with Jim Harbaugh being ousted from the team during the toughest 3-game stretch of the season, waiting on some kind of last-second decision to come in on the day of game day, whether or not Harbaugh was going to, like, parachute in from a fighter jet from the sky. I think that, Sherrone Moore's, post-game speech dropping the F-bomb on TV, I think that the conclusion of the Penn State game was one of the most important, iconic moments of the season. So I'm going to throw that in there for the mix of our next little top 5 here.
I like that, and now's the time that Penn State can enter the conversation. They always want to be our rivals, but like, come on, Penn State, you always enter the conversation a little bit later. Yeah, you had Manny Diaz. I thought about a few Penn State moments. You had Manny Diaz doing the sign, come early, stay loud, whatever. He was doing like the sign thing. I believe I took it in another direction. So I don't have Sherrone Moore's post-game speech, but I want to say that this moment was after Penn State. To be honest, it happened a few times, and so I'm a little confused on what game it was particularly. But I'm actually going with the picture that is behind me. That was my Penn State moment, or actually one of my 2 Penn State moments is this Blake Corum bloodied face image that was taken by Ben Herbert. I'm fairly certain that was after Michigan ran the ball like 30-something times in a row against Penn State.
To be clear, I do agree with you. I'm more so saying like just the victory, the essence of the victory over Penn State as a whole is kind of what I'm looking at when it comes to you.
And so, and this can be blended with another one of mine. And so I don't know how we want to parse this out. So we can put the Corum bloodied face and the Sherrone Moore post-game speech together because that's both post-Penn State. But I also had on my list Chris Jenkins tweeting out bet and everybody tweeting out bet. To me, I mean, and that's different because that's before the game, but it's like, it's when they announced that Jim Harbaugh would be suspended again and that kind of bet mentality went viral amongst Michigan. To me, that was a pretty special moment in like the story of the season. So, and I should just say, ranked higher than all of these moments for me, is the Roman Wilson jump man catch in the Rose Bowl. Like for for me, that's like the next one up. So I'll let you choose how we want to go about this.
I would say, the bet even is included in the conquering of Penn State as well. I feel like, that was just a whole movie in itself, that Penn State week.
Love it.
Everything that happened, the bet, that was just an emotional lead up of that week to, ultimately conquering Penn State. I feel like we group that in. I also agree with you about the Roman Wilson catch on the tipped J.J. McCarthy pass. Wilson brings it 30 yards up within the 5, I think, to the 4-yard line, setting who else but himself up for that touchdown. I believe, was it the game tying touchdown, or did that put Michigan ahead?
I don't know. I'm at this point I'm lost, but
The game tying 4-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah,
Michigan had been trying to get in that fourth quarter. So I'm there with you on that part.
Yeah, so let's do this. So number 6 is Chris Jenkins tweets out bet. The whole team and staff pick it up. They're the Jim Harbaugh weird saga. Is he gonna parachute in or not? Sherrone Moore's emotional post-game speech and Blake Corum's bloodied face. That whole Penn State, the whole arc of that game was just
like that all happened within a week. Isn't that crazy?
It was nuts. We've never seen any. That was like the craziest college football story.
I was so overstimulated after the end of that game.
It was crazy. And so that is all number 6. And then I'm going to say number 7. You and I both, I think we kind of agree that it's time to get Roman Wilson's jump man catch in the Rose Bowl. I mean, most iconic picture of a Michigan player making a catch since Braylon against Michigan State. I think that is just a legendary catch. All right. So that we've got our top 7. We're almost halfway there. Next up on my list is Donovan Edwards, the Don, breaking away with 2 first-quarter touchdowns in the national championship after struggling all year long. I just thought that was wild, man. I know you and I were both at the Natty as well, and I did not have that on my bingo card of like all of the things that were going to happen in that game. At that point, we had just decided like, okay, this is not Donovan Edwards' season, like whatever, we'll win it in a different way. And then out of nowhere, the dude, he becomes the Buckeye killer Donovan Edwards that we know and love, and he runs those 2 long touchdowns in the first quarter, blows the game wide open, and makes a statement that we're going to win this thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I had it listed on my top moments as the first touchdown that he scored, but
okay.
That kind of counts too. They were both very well within reach time-wise of each other. It seemed like one after the other. I think it was on the play drives, but Dono, after having the type of season that he had, I believe he didn't even have his first rushing touchdown until the Penn State game, if I'm not mistaken. But, breaking loose for 2 touchdowns in arguably the most important game of Michigan's season, I think, that was just totally iconic and absolutely needed for this Michigan team to be able to conquer the national title beast, and they did that with Donovan Edwards' help. So I completely agree with you. I had that right there as well in that same lineup.
Well, so we have number 8. Let's move to number 9. Now, this is where I started to get creative, and I started to pick some things that weren't all necessarily.
Remind me real quick, where do we stand right now with our list?
Okay, number 1, Michigan defense stuffs Jalen Milroe at the Rose Bowl. Number 2, let's go Zach chant after the leg injury, Corum touchdown. Number 3, Mike Sainristil seals the deal in the Natty in Houston with the fourth quarter interception. Number 4, Rod Moore walk-off interception against Ohio State. Number 5, Blake Corum overtime touchdown run in the Rose Bowl. Number 6 is the whole Penn State shenanigans and scenario. Bet Sherrone Moore getting emotional, Corum bloody face. Number 7, Roman Wilson, the flying Hawaiian, gets up there and makes that catch. And then number 8, the Don, 2 touchdowns in the first quarter of the Natty.
All right, perfect.
So number 9 for me, or the next highest one for me, is this is one that I think maybe is overlooked by some people, but to me is just a really special moment of the season, and it's one of the things that makes Jim Harbaugh such a special person and man and coach. Mike Hart became the first African American to head coach at Michigan, and a lot of that kind of got glossed over in a lot of what was going on because you had a lot of different things. It was week 2, and Mike Hart coached the second half of, what was that? Was that Bowling Green, or that? I guess Bowling Green was week 3 maybe. But anyway,
yeah.
I guess that was UNLV. So Mike Hart became
UNLV
the first.
is who Mike Hart coached the second half in, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. I was at that game. I should remember that. So Mike Hart becomes the first African American to be a head coach at Michigan, and to me it's so special that it's him, because I mean that's the guy. When you're our age, like Mike Hart is that guy. He all-time leading rusher in Michigan history. It was so great to have him back on the staff. For him to now just always be in the record books for that is pretty special.
Excellent pick, Mike. Totally agree with that, and no love lost to Mike Hart, who's no longer on the staff, but was still, an integral part of that national championship winning season. Definitely a great pick there, buddy.
Well, tell me your next one, because I just want that to be on the list. I'm open to it doesn't necessarily have to land right here, since it's not a football play, we can plug it in somewhere. So what's your next one, and we can decide where to plug it in.
Let's see. Well, for my next pick, I'm going to go with JJ hitting Tyler Morris. Morris scampering down the sideline in the Rose Bowl, went for about 38 yards, if I'm not mistaken, to put Michigan up before the half in the Rose Bowl. I believe Bama would have to settle for a field goal following that Morris touchdown. But in terms of just electrifying postseason plays for Michigan, I think that Morris touchdown was probably, one of the most electric offensive plays that you got from this Michigan team over the course of this last offseason. So I thought that one definitely needs to be up there somewhere. Just an iconic call from the guys in the booth as well. So definitely that's a play that I think about often when I'm thinking of this championship winning season for the Michigan Wolverines.
It just shows you how big that Rose Bowl game was, that so many of our moments come from that game. Because I can even think of a couple other moments that are in that game that may or may not come up later for me. I didn't even have that on my list, but I made my list just from memory. I wasn't like looking at anything. And now that you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah, he just burned that SEC defense. Everybody says the Big Ten can't hang with the SEC. Tyler Morris, who was not even one of the premier playmakers on that team, outran the entire Alabama secondary. Let's put that at number 9, and then let's go ahead and just plug in Mike Hart at number 10 there. Now to me, this is a fun one. I'll present my next one, but Roman Wilson, the helmet catch against Nebraska. That was crazy, dude. If you want to talk about like what is like the most impressive play of the season, if you take meaning out of it, like, because all these other plays had like significant meaning behind them. But if you take that out and you just say like on the football field, like what's the craziest thing we saw? I don't know if it gets any better than Roman Wilson's helmet catch in the end zone in Nebraska. One of the best catches I've ever seen.
Completely agree. And I've got all of these, plays that I'm looking at here as we're going down this list. And, you don't really know how to prioritize that when there's not much meaning behind them. But
Yeah.
that catch against Nebraska, I mean, that's the catch of the season, right?
Yeah.
I think that absolutely belongs here in the discussion and with respectable value. So I compliment you for remembering the helmet catch in there. Definitely agree with it being in there. I'll tell you one that I've got here in this range, and that is Will Johnson beginning the matchup against Ohio State by jumping
Oh.
the route against Marvin Harrison Jr., grabbing the interception, and I think he took it for about 17 or 18 yards, really set the tone for that matchup against Ohio State with what the Buckeyes were going to be going up against offensively. So I really like that play if we're talking about, memorable iconic moments from the season.
That's interesting because my next one up was a Will Johnson interception, but it wasn't that Will Johnson
I got that one
interception.
on here too
So,
though.
so the crazy acrobatic Will Johnson interception to start the second half in the national championship game. Both of those interceptions were huge as far as like moments go. They both set the tone, right? Like it appeared as though Washington, may come out and score in the second half of the Natty, and Will Johnson made that. I think it all took us a moment to even realize what had happened versus the Ohio State game that you just brought up, where it was very clear what happened. He just boss hogged his way across that Marvin Harrison Jr. route. Kyle McCord just kind of laid one out there for him, and he set the tone against Ohio State. So I don't know if we want to just put those back to back and or how we want to sort that out. I'm okay. I'm okay either way.
Probably
We're
putting
at
them
12.
back to back would be fitting, just because they were both done with the same kind of, repercussions of what he did to the opposing team. So I would say that they're pretty, similar in terms of impact on the game.
I can't believe we got that guy coming back this season. It's just when you think about like the star power that he has, because he didn't even play for the first few weeks, and then he just came in and just dominated. So I'm gonna say Will Johnson setting the tone against Ohio State. Maybe just edges out the Natty one, even though the Natty interception was like a more impressive catch. Setting the tone against Ohio State was just so important. I think it got in Kyle McCord's head a little bit, and it also made Ryan Day not want to throw the ball, which I noticed the rest of the game they were very hesitant to use Kyle McCord, which to me that made a big difference. And so I'm gonna put that at 12 since you brought it up.
And there was just so much made of that matchup, Will Johnson on Marvin Harrison Jr. I just thought, even though Harrison Jr. went off a little bit in that game, Will Johnson still made some plays, still ends up with the W, and that's in large part to him ultimately setting the tone in the front half of the game the way that he did, making that interception and getting Michigan well positioned into enemy territory. So ultimately, both of them very important.
We've got 2 spots remaining. We're all the way through number 13 now. I've got four left that I want to bring up that are just kind of fun. So we've already we're kind of beating a dead horse with the Rose Bowl, but to me, the fact that Michigan got 7 sacks in the Rose Bowl is just something that, to me, that's like a thing from the season that I remember that's crazy. A lot of the record books will tell you 6. I'm telling you right now, they got 7 sacks. There's one Junior Colson sack in there that they don't. Not every box score counts it as a sack because Milroe fumbled the ball and picked it up, but he fumbled it so fast and picked it up and had nowhere to go, and Colson sacked him. It pisses me off that they don't count that as a sack. So I'm just throwing that out there. They got 7 sacks. That was next on my list, but I'm open to leaving that off just because we've got so much Rose Bowl on this list already. What else do you have?
And just to your credit, Mike, I also made a similar decision. I've got Mason Graham setting Bama way back with that sack on second and goal, where Bama was in a good position to kind of keep this overtime thing going against Michigan. Mason Graham made it extremely difficult for them prior to Michigan ultimately making that stop, that number one stop that we talked about. But so many great sacks in that game, it would almost be unfair to put one of them ahead of any of the other ones. Also important, but that was another one I think will be included in that category that you just mentioned of Rose Bowl amazing plays that we just don't get to touch. But I've got this one that I've got to talk about, and that is Samaj Morgan delivering one of the most, not the most, because we can't go there, delivering one of the most impressive punt returns that I've ever seen somebody deliver in a Michigan uniform. 87 yards, all the way from the back of the house to, right on the other side of that goal line. Samaj Morgan just laying it all out on the field and then delivering an amazing post-game interview. One of those ones that will forever, just replay as being one of the funniest post-game interviews. But had to throw Samaj Morgan in there. A play from the Big Ten championship game. Probably the best play of the Big Ten championship game. But yeah, I got to throw that one in there.
So punt return and post game interview from the championship game. To me, that wasn't even the most impressive play of the season for Samaj.
I mean, Mike Sainer still, holds all the plays from that Big Ten championship game.
Yeah. So my favorite Mike Sainer still play of the season, or I'm sorry, Samaj Morgan play of the season. I want to say it was against Indiana. It was that. Do you remember that touchdown? There was a little out route, and he had like 7 guys around him, and he just kind of just wiggled his way to the goal line and somehow got in. That's when I was like, okay, this kid is special. That was like a special play. I don't want to put it on the list because it's Indiana. Like, I'm sorry, but Indiana, you just don't get on the list. But I just wanted to throw that out there as an honorable mention. Samaj Morgan. That was, to me, his most impressive play. But for
definitely
you, the post-game
electric.
The post-game interview is definitely there. All right, we got 2 spots left. I'm going to just rattle off a couple more that are on my list. Cornelius Johnson, the bobble catch, Bowling Green. You were at that game, first night game under the lights. Really kind of a miserable game to watch, but that Cornelius Johnson bobble catch, it was actually an underthrown ball by JJ a little bit, and he bobbled it into the end zone. That was impressive. Mike Sainer still waxes Travion Henderson, and we get one of the maybe one of the best Gus Johnson calls ever. That to me, that was a fun one. And then I've also got Josh Wallace, the interception that didn't count. The first game of the season, he makes one of the most spectacular interceptions you'll ever see. And to me, the reason that was such an important moment is because even though it didn't count, it showed us what we had in Josh Wallace. We were all wondering, and it showed us, oh, this guy's here to play. So I know we just went through a lot. Go ahead and throw out whatever else you have, and then we'll pick 2 of them to round out the list.
Here's what I've got. Here's probably my 2 strongest remaining cases here. The first one is the 72-yard interception return for Mike Sainer still against Michigan State. Hits the Paul Bunyan in the end zone. You just got to have an appreciation for a win over Michigan State. There's so many great plays, courtesy of Colston Loveland and others in that game. I'm going to go with Mike Sainer still, as kind of my representation for iconic moment from this year's win against Little Brother. Mike Sainristil, 72
Wait a
yards.
second. So now they're all running together because Mike Sanders still had such a good season. I'm still going back through and watching these games. Was that the one where it was like it didn't even look like he had the ball, or was that the Rutgers game? I feel like it might have been Rutgers where like nobody knew Mike Sanders still had the ball, and he like spun out with the ball and then scored a touchdown. Was that Michigan State or was that? I think it was Rutgers.
No, I believe that one was Rutgers. I know which one you're talking about, I think. Michigan State was the one where, they almost threw it right to him, and then he just
Yeah,
ran all the way down the sideline to the
yeah.
house.
To
72
me,
yards. They barely laid a finger on him, if anything. But yeah, he just made them look like little children.
the Rutgers one was a more impressive pick six, but I do think we need to throw Michigan State on this list somehow. And I think handing them their largest home loss in their history deserves a spot on this list. So I'm going to throw it out there, kind of piggybacking on your Mike Sainristil interception. We're talking about the 15 greatest moments, handing little brother the largest loss in their home history. To me, that's the next one on the list.
Yeah, I would agree. And really, like, you can't even pinpoint Sainristil's moment. Colston Loveland made them look inferior. AJ
Yeah,
Barner made them look inferior. JJ made them look inferior. Just a solid 3.5 hours of just prime time dunking
it
on
was
little
so good.
brother.
It was so good. It
And
was such a good
we'll
game.
name that one just like the Penn State week, in essence, just a 49-point drubbing uh, in that primetime rivalry game. I'm right there with you.
Okay, so that's number 14,
Oh
Michigan
yeah,
State.
and here's my next one that I'll nominate here, and that was the point during the Rose Bowl when Michigan was down early in the fourth. The Wolverines fail to convert, and then Bama is driving and looking like they're going to come up with more points. This was a real oh shit point in the Rose Bowl for Michigan fans. And who else but Quentin Johnson and Josh Wallace
Josh Wallace.
come in to save the day. Quentin Johnson forces the fumble. Josh Wallace tracks it, scoops it up, secures it. Michigan doesn't end up coming away from any points off of that drive. I believe they missed a field goal following it, but they still, the defensive backs there stopped the progress of Bama, who were about to capitalize on a really shitty situation with Michigan failing to come away with points either on that drive before. So I think that was really a momentum changer, and it's also a clip that frequently gets recycled. So I think that those two guys making that play, I'll throw them in there as a possible honorable nomination, depending on anything that you
I,
give here.
it's hard to. I mean, that was such a big moment. It was such a big moment. I almost feel like it needs to be higher. Uh, God dang it, Matt, you've
The
got me
only
scratching my
reason
head.
I
Yeah,
didn't make it higher is because Michigan doesn't come away with points off of it. But at
yeah,
that
but I
point,
think
Bama was on the 50, or like they were close to
yeah,
the
it
50.
changed the game. It changed the game. I mean, it really saved the game.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnson forces the fumble. Josh Wallace scoops
They
it up
grabbed a couple
before
easy
going up.
first downs. They were exploiting Michigan. It was kind of a oh shit point in the fourth quarter where, it was do or die. Somebody had to make a play, and they fucking did, and it was glorious.
Let's put that above Michigan State. Let's just make the Michigan State one the last one on our
Let's
list.
do it.
So, Quentin Johnson, forced fumble. Okay, I'm gonna run through the list. Man, we got some good honorable mentions that didn't even make the list, but I mean, hell, what are you gonna do? So, all right, number one, defense stuffs Jalen Milroe at the goal line in overtime to win the Rose Bowl. Number two, Zach Zinter goes down with the broken leg. The "Let's Go Zach" chant echoes throughout the big house. And then on the very next play, Blake Corum runs it into the end zone and throws the 6-5 up in honor of Zach Zinter. Just legendary moment. Number 3, Mike Sainristil seals the deal for the national championship in Houston. Fourth quarter interception, and does what only Mike Sainristil can do and just tacks on like 80-something yards to it. Number 4, Rod Moore walk-off interception against Ohio State. It just shows you what a special season it was if that's number 4, right? A walk-off interception to win the game against Ohio State. Number 5, back to the Rose Bowl. Blake Corum, overtime touchdown run. The sun is setting. The lights are on. The Michigan versus Alabama. Overtime starts, and Blake Corum says, we're going to win this fucking thing. He spins through some guys, gets over the goal line. Epic play. Number 6, they take our coach from us again over some bullshit. They break their own rules and try to suspend our coach again. Chris Jenkins tweets out bet. Every member of the team starts to tweet out bet. The coaching staff tweets bet. It becomes a slogan of the game. They go out there, they dominate Manny Diaz's bitch ass after he tries to mock us for the sign situation. And then after the game, Sherrone Moore breaks down with some emotion. Blake Corum's face is bloodied. Michigan
standing
beats
there
Penn
with a
State.
bloody ass face in the post game interview. Sherrone
Ran the
Moore's
ball.
cussing.
Oh, man, he drops the F-bomb. We ran the ball 32 times in a row.
Fucking love you, man.
That was number 6. Number 7, Roman Wilson with one of the most iconic catches in Michigan football history. He goes up after the ball's tipped. It's high. JJ throws a good ball, but it gets tipped. It sails a little high. Roman goes up with one hand, makes the grab, jukes a guy, and goes in for the score. Leaps in for the score. Number 8, Donovan Edwards sets the tone in the national championship and lets everybody in the country know that he is still there. Two consecutive first quarter touchdowns to put Michigan up 14-0. Number 9, back to the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl's all over this list. J.J. McCarthy gets a little crossing route to Tyler Morris, and then Tyler Morris turns on the Jets. And, at Michigan, it just means more when we play the fucking SEC, and Tyler Morris just worked them, dude. So that was number 9. Number 10, Mike Hart becomes the first African-American head coach at Michigan. Of course, Sherrone Moore is the first full-time, but Mike Hart got the honor of being the first to ever do that in week 2. Number 11, one of the best catches you'll ever see. Roman Wilson, the helmet catch against Nebraska, adding embarrassment to just a never-ending embarrassment, curse since 1997 for Nebraska, which, side note, Nebraska is going to be good this year because the curse has finally been broken because Michigan finally has their unanimous championship. We'll talk about that another time. I digress here. Number 12, Will Johnson sets the tone against Ohio State. Number 13, Will Johnson interception in the Natty. Number 14, Quentin Johnson forced fumble recovered by Josh Wallace in the Rose Bowl. And number 15, just to show you what a spectacular season it was, all the way down as the 15th greatest moment of our season, was handing little brother their largest home loss in history, beating Michigan State 49-0. That, my friend, is the top 15 moments of the 2023 Michigan National Championship season.
A strong-ass list right there.
Whew. Man, I tell you what, that is the episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the pod. Follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Wolverine Cron. I'm breaking down the top 100 Michigan players of all time right now, counting down the days to the season. Matt, we're a couple players in. We had Ty Streets at 100, Rob Renus at 99. I want to say Marquise Walker and Brian Greasy have been in there. So we're counting our way down to the top 100. You can follow my buddy here, Matt Hartwell, at Maze Crusader. He's just spitting facts, creating content and good shit on Maize and Brew, amongst other things. Matt, what are you going to do for the rest of the day, man?
Man, I'm gonna pick up my daughter here in a little bit. You know, she's been hanging out with her mom, and bring her back to the house, cook up some delicious food, not some Taco Bell, because trying to eat healthier. But other than that, just slowly grinding away until the return of football season, my friend.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm just holding my breath. We're in the double digit days now, so we can start to get excited now that we've relived Michigan's natty season. That is Matt Hartwell. I am Michael Smeltzer. That was the Big House Bleachers podcast. As always, go blue.
Go blue.